And we're back here. Hello, everyone. This is our after party with Mark Silver. And while we're waiting for other people to join us, possibly, let's just jump into continuation of our conversation. And so for everybody who's on this call, I believe you can unmute your mics. And if this is an open conversation, if you want to, hi, Nicole.
Nicole, yay.
Feel free to unmute your mics and speak freely with questions or comments to Mark. We have about half an hour. So thank you, Mark, for the call so far.
Yeah.
Questions, comments?
I have one.
Some housekeeping here.
Yeah. Oh,
go for it.
Go ahead.
Oh, go for it.
Me? Okay.
Yeah.
Hi, Mark.
Hi, Nicole. Yay. Nice to see you.
Good to see you too. Sorry, moving around here. Try and stay still. I was wondering if you could expand a little bit on there was a piece around capitalism deliberately aiming to personalize personalize, I'm losing my words here, but bring things down to individual.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm asking that is I just took a workshop on the weekend on nonviolent communication with Rochelle Lamb. Fabulous. She takes it into a much deeper place than it typically goes. It was really amazing. And one of the things she was talking about was needs. Because one of the big things about nonviolent communication is having your needs met. And what she was doing was she was explaining how people misinterpret what needs are quite often, and that we think of them as individual needs.
Right.
And what needs actually, needs are needs if they are needs for all life on Earth.
Right.
All humans, the
needs are universal. I mean, from a Sufi perspective, the needs are actually the divine qualities.
Aha. Right.
Oh.
The divine qualities equate to the NVC needs.
Yeah.
Can you speak more when you say divine qualities? Can you just
so in the Sufi Islamic understanding of the divine, the mystical understanding in Islam, inshallah, I speak accurately here, but so there is the oneness, universal source from which we are not separate. It's not a beard in the sky. It's not, a being. It's universal source from which everything comes and everything returns and everything is not separate, right? It's like it contains time and space. It's the non-duality, right? It's the oneness. Now, that further, as we get closer to reality, we're going esoteric here, people. Esoteric, hold on. As we come closer come closer towards our lived experience in the 3D physical reality, there are layers that have been identified, and similar layers have been identified in Judaism, the 4 layers of reality. There's the 4 layers of the heart in Sufism. And so there's the realm of the physical, then there's the realm of the the heart, which is more of the kind of the unseen, but there's still form, like angels and spiritual beings and deeper emotions. And then between the unseen world and the oneness, there's this world of the pure divine qualities. And the pure divine qualities are aspects of the divine, such as love. Love is an aspect of the divine. It's a divine quality. It's a divine name. Strength, friendship, compassion, right? Power. And it goes on and on and on. The Sufis talk about, in Islam they talk about the 99 names of God. In Judaism, 76. In Hinduism, there's all the many different gods and goddesses that represent aspects of the oneness. You know, there's many ways that cultures have talked about this, but it's like these essential characteristics, because the oneness is something that's beyond the knowing of the ego. We come to know the oneness through the qualities. At least that's the Sufi perspective. And so as we identify needs in our heart is like yearning for love, or it's yearning for connection or witnessing or appreciation, or, you know, compassion or gentleness or strength or power or success or light or contribution, or, you know, like there's these different qualities that are the ways the divine expresses it. And they are always present in our heart. But our ego, when it feels separate, when it's having an experience of being in our little s self instead of our big S self, and it's just a perspective of witnessing, of where we're witnessing spiritually from, then we witness ourselves as lacking those qualities. And so the need comes up like, oh, I need love. I'm yearning for love. I'm thirsty for love. And so we're wanting to get those needs met. We're wanting to get those needs met, those thirsts met. But from a Sufi perspective, from talking about surrender spiritually, we aren't trying to like get the need met and then move on. The Sufi teaching is we are trying to develop the perfect thirst so that we never stop drinking. We never want to disconnect from love. We never want to disconnect from the outpouring of love that we have available. We are containers. We are flutes to be played. We are, you know, we are being lived by spirit. And it's only when we forget that we, you know, that we retreat into this belief or experience that we're just us, that we're an individual and not part of this larger collective oneness. Was that, I don't know, it's like you get esoteric, and I don't know how much I'm using Sufi jargon and how much I'm, you know, bringing.
Well, for me, that was awesome. Totally with you. And the major aha moment was right at the beginning there, with the equating those NVC needs with the divine qualities or the names of God or whatever label you want to put on those things. So, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
How we come to know oneness is to be dancing between the needs then and the divine qualities, perhaps? Is it that awe and wonder of how we approach or we identify our needs?
Yeah. So in Sufi terms, there's kind of like to truly know oneness. And I'm not speaking as like an enlightened master. I make no claims to that. You know, I've had some experiences and some tastes, and, you know, there's some things that my heart has access to, but I'm not claiming to be enlightened in the way that some people think about that. And, but my understanding and my experience, my lived experience with this is that there's kind of is that it has to do with surrender. It has to do with surrender. It's not a technique. It's not a process. And so we can prepare ourselves and we can surrender up to a point, but then after that, there's a realization that nothing we do, that we can do nothing. There's a Sufi teaching that says that the only power the ego has is the power to cover up the truth. It's our only power. It's our only power. And so there's a point that comes like to know oneness, like what we do is we sacrifice and sacrifice and sacrifice. Like we try to give away parts of ourselves that are anchoring us to a reality that isn't true and that isn't a reality. And we eventually are surrendered, that something surrenders us into this, that like plunges us into oneness, and our hearts begin to drink that. And so there are very helpful personal development and workshop style exercises that help us to both strengthen our sense of self and confidence so that we can move in the world, and that help to work through our belief systems and ways that we cling. And there are also spiritual practices where we just are trusting that we are being moved by the divine and that we're not actually doing it ourselves. And so there's these pieces to that, you know. It's like there's the workshoppy stuff, which I've done my share of and continue to do, really, really helpful stuff. And then I have my Sufi spiritual practices. Various paths have various practices, you know, where I may just be praying or chanting or remembering or what have you, and then I'm overtaken by something comes to me. I'm not doing it. Does that get at what you were asking?
You answered my question. You've left me speechless, and which anybody who knows me knows that's quite an accomplishment, and really deserves some breath. That's one of the things that I really appreciated. It's just the slightest little subtle thing that really made a profound impact on me was when you were speaking on the call, how you were able to just take a breath. And how often we forget to breathe into, okay, where are we really? Is that ego trying to cover up the truth, and you were pausing to be with the truth. Of course, everything you said had profound impact on me, but it was that I keep coming back to, and something I am going to practice. That is a practice, to breathe through our thinking. And to keep coming back, to check in.
You know,
thank you.
SubhanAllah.
You know, what you're both reminding me of also is something that's so important, and it came up also during the webinar. So we had previously Riane Eisler on our call, and she's the author of many books, in particular Chalice and the Blade and Real Wealth of Nations, and her work centers on helping us shift from a domination system to a care-based partnership system globally, and doing her work, and Sandy and I had the honor to both participate in one of her workshops, and also to get to know her and work with her. And it one of the things I got very clear on, which was a little discerning to say the least, was the degree to which I, who am someone who tries to be care and compassion and partnership based, the degree to which I still had this cellular memory in my body of domination systems. So that I was working with a colleague, and she and I know her fairly well, and I trust her like implicitly. And then we had an exchange, and I suddenly felt that she was like running ahead, and like I felt I was being left. Like I had all my old, I would use a word that I won't use here. I had all of my old stories and old fears and old stuff come up. And then I was realizing like, wow, I'm looking at this relationship through the lens of domination. And it wasn't conscious. It was the cellular memory in my body that was triggering fear, because, you know, she didn't do anything wrong. There was a communication gap, and like, oh, and this place of breath, you were just reminding me, Sandy, like when we choose to like be present and breathe with what is, like, oh, there's space for everything. And I think that that's important too, when we talk about discerning, is to like look at what's the lens through which I'm looking at. And then to maybe even challenge that a little bit. Because until I had this conversation with Riane, I could have made a case. I'm a little embarrassed now, but I could have made a case of like, well, she's this or she's that. And I didn't feel that in my heart, you know? And it was just because there was still some fear left that had nothing to do with reality. and that's a really, that piece still kind of rattles me sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
We're discerning when do we know that we're in communion with the person in front of us? And I may assume that I am, but I don't really know the intention of the other person. And when we're shifting, how do we work through that kind of discernment? Was that clear, that question, Mike?
Allah, Allah, Allah. You know, our hearts know. Our hearts know, right? I mean, one of the things that I hold unswervingly from my experience in my life is that the divine is real, spirituality is real, like we have connections. We know when we're out of connection. We know when we're in connection. I've had, and there are layers and layers and layers of it. It's not an on and off switch. There's a spectrum. There's connection, then there's connection, then there's connection, and then there's more, and then there's more, and then there's more. And so there's not like an ending point where we're connected. But I've had so many experiences with people where I just have this feeling in my heart, and we know we're in connection. We know this. Our heart knows this. Our heart essentially, from pre-eternity, from our creation, from our essence, knows that we're essentially the same. And I do not mean that in any kind of a surface way that erases, our personal histories and stories. I mean at the essence level. And part of the essence level and acknowledging that is also acknowledging and witnessing that the divine is also present in the physical, and that our stories and our histories and our differences are part of that essence. And so it doesn't, I don't mean in a spiritual bypass kind of way. I feel like I have to be very careful because a lot of this has been misused so badly in popular culture to say, oh, well, we're just going to the essence. But the essence carries all of this. The essence says, I see your fear, I see your story, I see your trauma, I see your hurt, I see your heart, I see your soul. I know that we are one. And I know that your story and your experience are different than mine, and still we are one. And I have to have deep humility and surrender in order to be able to see your story and accept it as part of something that I am part of. Because that's empathy, right? That's compassion. That's witnessing. That's witnessing. And again, like there's such a subtle line between appropriation and stealing someone's story and pretending that we were Native American, whatever. But it's like like these kinds of flights of fantasy that people go into around past life stuff and etc. And I don't mean to poo-poo past life stuff, because that's real, that can be very real too. I just mean that it's all been so misused. I'm just so conscious that with my words, I want there to be a heard experience, that there is a way that we can honor each other's experience and see each other in a very profound way, and know that our hearts are one, and know that our stories matter at the same time.
Thank you for that, Mark. One of the things that I find I experience in terms of whether I know I'm connecting with somebody is that sometimes it's after the fact. I realize, oh, darn, that was not a connected conversation, or that was, and then depending on the situation, I might go back and revisit it in a more connected way or not, depending. But
yeah, well, disconnection is kind of characterized by an unconsciousness, right? So it's hard to know when we're not connected. We tend to know when we're connected, and we tend to not be present when we're not connected. Like that's kind of like that's the territory, right?
Yeah, I guess so. So by extraction, then, could you say when you are connected, you're probably more likely to know that you are connected?
That's That's my experience, you know? I mean, let me caution us all in trying to find a formula.
Sure.
I want it too. Like, what's the answer? What's the formula? How do I know? It's like, you know, because you know your heart. You know, because you're in relationship with the divine. You know, because I know I'm awake because I'm awake. And I know I'm dreaming because I've woken up. I know I was dreaming, as you said, after the fact, because I woke up from the dream.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that that dream, which seemed so real a moment ago, and now I wipe the sleep from my eyes. You know, there's a, we know, and there's layers of waking up, and there's layers of waking up. I can feel very awake and connected right now, and I'm sure, you know, in the future I will realize, like, you know what, that was only a small fraction of what was possible. There's always more. There's always more, because the divine is infinite. Source is infinite. And so our ego, in an attempt to control, reaches for formulas, reaches for knowledge, reaches in some way to try to capsulate and put it in a box. And all our only work is to try to remember the divine in every moment, and to let our heart guide us. And that as we gain knowledge and gain expertise in different aspects of living in this world, our heart, as it continues to open and we continue to remember on a moment by moment by moment by moment by moment basis, that we continue to use that deeper in service to love and deeper in surrender.
I need to interrupt here a little bit. And it's interesting because I have a whole bunch of conversations that are going through my head, but one of them in particular is this place about where sometimes, I'll say it like this, sometimes the most loving thing somebody can do is a good, swift kick in the ass. And I'm saying that in the context of incredible, horrific events that are occurring in the world, dominations, abuses, threats to life. Loving those people can be the most effective way to love those people is to incarcerate them and or remove their guns. It doesn't mean that we have a healthy incarceration system. That's a whole other channel. But, you know, interestingly, I've been having a lot of conversations with people about having compassion. And what does it mean in today's world in light of horrific racism here in the US, and white militants, to have compassion for those people. And I've gotten yelled at and all kinds of negative things. And it's interesting that sometimes love and compassion are put into this soft category of like, let's hold hands and hug another person and sing kumbaya and it's all okay. So I just want to sort of to that point, because it is very complicated. And
Yes. I mean. Love annihilates us. Love is an annihilating force, and it is at times soft when we need it, and at times it's a hurricane. And at times, you know, like there are divine qualities of justice and the divine quality of the dominator, you know, and there are the divine quality of, you know, the giver of death, you know, like there are these divine qualities. There in Sufism, the qualities are divided up into the majestic and the beautiful. The beautiful are the ones that we enjoy. You know, Ar-Rauf, the gentle, right? Ash-Shafi, the healer, you know, As-Salam, the peaceful, the whole. But there are these other qualities which are the majestic, which induce awe in us. And if people really were in awe of their creator, if they were really in awe of the divine, they would not be able to wreak hatred in the way that they do, because they would know that the damage they're doing to their own hearts and the damage that they are doing to the people around them is something that is going to leave a lot of scars and pain, and that the actions that we take based in love and service and surrender can be very strong.
yeah, the other, I'm going to interject here because it's screaming in my heart to say the other piece of what was going on when you were talking about love in this way, and still is well, I was going to say, my grandmother says it best, consider the source, which is rather appropriate for this conversation because which is the source, right? But I was in a social justice, my PhD program, which is a very mixed community, intentionally mixed community or diverse community of people, as the program is rooted in social justice. And I made the comment, and you touched on this earlier, but it's relevant here. Yeah, but I don't see color. I see a human being.
But
And
then they're not seeing the human being, right?
right. And that was my point too, that like we can talk about love, we can talk and say I'm trying to be loving or compassionate, but if you can't hear what the other person is saying, what a person of color, what their story is, or a person who is very fluid in their gender choices or sexual orientation choices, if you can't hear their experience, you're not being loving. What you choose to do with it is another story, and how we choose. But I think that that's also part of the complexity.
Lisa, I'm sorry.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in because I think, hey dear, when we were on the webinar, you just touched on this conversation a little bit about justice and not acknowledging the history of the country and the history of the economics of the country. And there's no real answer for that, but until that acknowledgement is there, you know, and we kind of lagged off and went off into something else. And I think when we're looking at what's happening now with, you know, all this horrific violence and the hatred and the racism, I think that is also something that it's a matter of an unconscious or a collective amnesia. You know, we're more comfortable with this collective amnesia where we can't acknowledge those things. And until we do acknowledge that foundation of where this, you know, how the economy was built up to begin with. And I think all of this fear, where you have all these alternative groups and individuals that are coming out now, they're fighting to maintain the domination system that was in place. And you know, and I'd like to talk about that a little. You know, they're fighting, and this fear and this anger and this racism that's coming up is a battle to maintain a system that has been broken from the beginning and is not sustainable.
I mean, I'm not sure what to add to that. I think it's like, there you go. You know, it's true. It's true.
But you talked about the former economy and the foundation of our economy, but you didn't deal with what's happening today, or at least I missed out on that part of it. And because that same system.
What do you mean, our former economy? I don't. Yeah, I don't see the economy as having changed. I don't see it as a former economy. I see it as the same thing. The same thing has been happening for hundreds of years and continues.
Okay. All right.
Did that not come? Maybe I didn't express myself clearly.
No, maybe I just didn't get that. So you're in that level of exploitation, even now, even though it's not, we don't have per se modern slavery.
We do. We do have modern slavery. It's the penal system has been transformed. I mean, and if you look historically at this particular example, for instance, you know, you see that as soon as slavery ended, many states, especially in the U.S. South, enacted laws that enabled black people, African descended people, anyone deemed black, to be arrested. And then there is a clause in the amendment that outlaws slavery that says, except for convicts can be put to forced labor. So you just go around arresting black people and you put them into forced labor, and boom, you have a continued slave economy. And so it continues to today. It continues to this day. Absolutely. Just not just laboring. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I was going to qualify it, but there's no qualification. It's just what it.
I stand corrected, because that's you're referring to the 13th Amendment.
Mm-hmm.
And
yes.
And I can't remember. An author's done a lot about the penal system, and I just can't remember her full name. Michelle something.
I think that's a
Right, I'm horrible. I'm horrible at names. I don't know why I was in an English major. Dishonor her in any way. I forget everybody's names. What is her name? The one who wrote on the New Jim Crow.
Yeah.
Is that what it was?
Yes.
Mass incarceration in the era of colorblindness is the name of the book, and the author is Michelle Alexander. There. Thank you, Google. So.
Well, that reminds me of what you had brought up in the call, how this has been baked into the very beginning of our history. And when you use the expression baked, it hasn't just been woven in like we could just pull a thread and heal it. It is really baked into our understanding of how we are together in this world. And actually, I'm glad you brought up the 13th Amendment because it was really the documentary 13th that opened my eyes to that where mass incarceration really began, and how our system is in place to keep this perpetuated. Lisa and I have been talking an awful lot about breaking through some of those core characteristics, and it's been quite an interesting process, and identifying how to do that. I mean, that's a big, hairy, audacious goal, but one that I think we're all required to look at and be aware of. And I can speak as a white woman and a white woman of privilege that this also speaks loudly to my white privilege, that when I hear my family or my friends say, there's nothing I can do about it, my vote doesn't matter, or what have you, and that's white privilege. We no longer have the privilege to disengage ourselves from breaking those patterns. We have to break those patterns for our survival. And we believe, and a lot of people I know believe, and a whole thought process believes, that it's up to the women. I would actually not fully agree in that. I think it's about everybody dialing in and tapping in and acknowledging their divine feminine, and that's men and women. Mm-hmm. And that's what I love so much about when you spoke about those divine qualities. I'm so excited about that. I can't wait to just sit with that. How the relationship, it broke me open when you said that our needs are the same as our divine qualities. And I'm like, well, of course, that makes perfect sense. Nicole, thank you for asking that question on the call, on this call. So, gosh, I feel like I'm probably just babbling. I've got all these words and thoughts swirling in my head, but this is important for us all to really think about. Can we have another call?
You just bring me to what I was about to say, is that we're already 6 minutes over. I don't know, Mark, if you have more time or not, but I don't want to take.
I actually don't. I have things I need to get to, unfortunately.
All right. I'm going to just put this book up, by the way, on the subject of divine names. And
thank you. I was going to reach for that. I recommend it highly. Dr. Rosina Fawzi Al-Rawi is not in the U.S. She's in Turkey, if I'm remembering correctly, and she is the daughter-in-law of my sheikh, and she is a very, very deep teacher, and I recommend this book. There's really some very deep work in there, and a wonderful transmission.
Is it reading forwardwards or backwards?
Yes. Yeah. Divine Names, the 99 healing names of the one.
So we'll also include this title in the email that we send out with people who are watching now. Oh, great.
Can I request, Lisa, if it's, sorry to put you on the spot here, this is being recorded. I would love it if we can put out more information about Mark's workshops, how we can subscribe to those, and then also the name of a little bit more about those two women that you mentioned on the call that are doing some great social impact work.
Desiree Anaway and
that book. Yeah.
So I've got those names written down, and I
put them in the chat, and I can get you their websites and such for email. They definitely need to be amplified, and I'm running a business. I'm delighted to have people come to our website and sign up for our work. we're at heartofbusiness.com, and start with subscribing if you like. You can you can read through the website and make sure if it resonates and clicks with you. It'll walk you through it. There's a work with us page, and if you go to that page, there's a free readiness assessment on, free stuff. The free stuff. We just redesigned this website a couple months ago, but there's a free stuff page where you can get the readiness assessment, which helps teach the stages of business development. And this Pay from the Heart class, The Heart of Your Business, starts next week. So if you're interested in it, you can find out more information. Again, if you go to the Work With Us page, there's a link on that page if you scroll down just a very little bit.
Thank you.
And at the sake of being too biased, whatever, it's an awesome class. You'll learn a lot. And especially because it's Pay from the Heart, which is just such a generous gift that you share and give. I mean, I've seen people that haven't been able to fully even pay for anything from the heart, and still, I think I forget what the minimum was, but
we were asking a minimum of $36.
Right. And so,
unless someone's food or shelter was at risk, in which case people could pay less than that. But for our own sustainability, we were asking for 36 and up.
It's a 9-week course, right?
Yeah, 9 sessions over 8 weeks, because the way the weeks fall. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Well, I thank you so much. We've gone about 10 minutes over, Mark. Thank you so much for being with us today, and we'll see you all later on. Thanks.
Mashallah. Thank you.
Lisa,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Bye.
Peace.
Bye.
The blessings.